Essentially, what is being said that if a landlord raises the rent beyond government set limits, they will have to pay 30% on the difference. There are a couple problems with this. Well over half the landlords in this country are smaller landlords, right? The average mom and pop landlord does not cash flow that much. They really don't. A lot of them are still putting a lot of the rent collected towards the mortgage, the interest and the principal, the homeowner's insurance, and the property tax.
Welcome to the Common Sense Philosophy channel. Today's title is Trump adds bigger landlord tax. Trump adds bigger landlord tax. So basically what's going on with this whole situation is it's coming. What the president seems like he's trying to do is trying to help everybody, but the way he does it sometimes kind of annoys everybody. So I don't know if you've been noticing, but some people feel landlords are charging too much for rent. You keep hearing that, oh, the rent is too high. It's too high. It's too high. So what he said, he wants to make it to where if you charge too much as a landlord, you'll get taxed for it. So the renters and people like that might be happy about it, but the landlords are like, what? And this is what's being talked about now. This is a trending topic about should the landlords pay more in tax if they raise the rent too high on the renters. But the thing is, a lot of times why the landlords are raising the rent on the renters is because they got to pay higher property tax and things like that. So they have their reason why they're charging what they're charging. So this is like a round and round thing. The more you pay attention to it, it was like the 50-year mortgage. The whole point of that was to try to get people in houses that didn't have the right credit score, FICO score, or they didn't have the highest enough down payment. So it was like, well, let's just lower the score to almost nothing, and let's stretch out the payments so it would be less. It would cost less. That was the whole point of it. That was the breakdown behind it. But it don't always work because now people say, well, the interest will make the house dang near double. So it's not worth it. So this is where we're going round and round with this situation. So when you start reading it like that, you be like, how can people really be helped? How do you really help people? Because a lot of times we can point the fingers at President Trump, or we can point it at, the Republicans, we can point it at the Democrats. But why don't we just stop and ask ourselves, what would you do if you had the power? Would you raise the tax? Would you lower the tax? Would you lower the FICO score? Would you give money for more houses? I mean, we've been on this road about these houses. Not even enough houses to house every person in the United States. Everybody in the United States couldn't get a house. It's just not enough houses. So the numbers, we start looking at how many people is in the United States, and you look at how many houses there are, you're like, okay, so that wouldn't work. Then you flip it and you say, well, even that alone, if we build more houses, how many people can afford to get in it? So that's another thing. This goes round and round and round. So you're trying to figure out what is the best. So when it comes down to this actual tax, it's just trying to help renters. But I don't know how landlords are going to feel about it, because that could be offensive on that side. And let's think about this too. Just the books of all this. When you have a business, you do proper accounting, and you have to think like people don't go buy houses, right? And we're talking about the smaller guys, not the corporations per se. You don't go, they call them mom and pop shops. You're not going to go purchase most people do this. They have their house that they live in, and then they'll go purchase one or two extra properties that they'll fix up with their money just for people to move in and live in to make them extra money. But nobody's going to want to rent to nobody if they're only paying $800 and the mortgage is $1,000 or $1,500. It just doesn't make sense. Plus they have to fix anything that breaks. So that's the thought process with all this.
Essentially, what is being said that if a landlord raises the rent beyond government set limits, they will have to pay 30% on the difference. there are a couple problems with this. Well over half the landlords in this country are smaller landlords, right? The average mom and pop landlord does not cash flow that much. They really don't. A lot of them are still putting a lot of the rent collected towards the mortgage, the interest and the principal, the homeowner's insurance, and the property taxes and any repairs. So most of them raise rent incrementally. Now, I understand that there are, landlords that are corporations that raise the rent significantly because they have a lot more inventory and, they're looking out for more so profits, right? And that's why I say for smaller landlords like myself, we go for tax flow over cash flow. So once they tax anything over the government set limits, and we always know that government set limits are so artificially low, you're going to hurt smaller landlords, right? Because their property taxes and, as we see, homeowners insurance go up every year. And so now you're not only eating into their ability to cover the cost of maintaining the property, right? Mortgage, interest, insurance, property taxes, principal on the mortgage. Additionally, we know that the lobbying groups, right? We know the Black Rocks are going to fight against it because they don't want to pay a 30% tax, right? They're not going to be as impacted, but they will be significantly impacted, right? A 30% tax on increase in rent is going to hurt a smaller landlord more than it will a larger entity, a private, hedge fund, private equity hedge fund. And so I doubt this bill will pass. It's performative, in my opinion. Again, the heavy hitters, those that have the actual power to influence these bills, they're not gonna let it happen. But I'm all for reform when it comes to affordable housing. I just think that when they do this, you need to consider the housing, the cost to carry these properties for smaller landlords. Taking 30% is going to cause a huge problem for the little guy.
Declared war on America's rent crisis, the Trump administration is introducing a landlord profit tax. Landlords are now in full panic. If landlords raise rents above government set limits, the excess will face a 300% penalty tax. Raise rent by $10,000, the IRS will take $30,000. The higher the rent increase, the more severe the decline, and profits will disappear. Instantly for years, rent has skyrocketed 35%. Today, 40% of renters hand over more than half their income to landlords. Even worse, Wall Street funds are buying entire apartment complexes, creating artificial shortages and trapping young people in permanent rent prisons. At a White House press conference, Trump pointed straight at the financial giants and declared, "Housing is not an ATM. Ordinary people are not crops to be harvested forever for decades. No president dared to hit real estate capital this hard."
We be chillin'.